It's more than practical, way more than merely factual. If you want to know the secrets of a life, it's free. Listen to girls behaving metaphysically. Listen to girls behaving metaphysically.
Welcome to Girls Behaving Metaphysically. Your hosts are two girls who believe that life is awesome, that laughter heals, and that it's possible to find deep spiritual insights in everyday experience. Join Robin Rice and Sumaya Wood for this week's adventure.
Well, hello. Happy Friday.
Hello, hello, hello. Cheers. It's Friday.
Yay. I'm Sumaya Wood.
And I'm Robin Rice, and we are
Girls Behaving Metaphysically.
All the time. That's who we are.
Yes. Whether we know it or not.
Whether we're together or not, through thick and thin. Anyway, welcome to our show. Thank you for joining us on this year's theme of divine adventure. And this month's theme is planting seeds. And we are so excited to have a guest today.
Yes. It's a topic that we don't talk about a lot, actually, now that I think about it. Collectively, I don't think we talk about it.
No, I don't think we talk about it anywhere, but mostly in our society.
And
especially.
Yeah, it feels like it's gets brushed under. This is my hand gesture for brushing things under the rug.
I like it.
Brushing things under the rug. And so, yes, so our topic today is good grief. And we're going to explore some things that we don't always talk about with grief, and what's the value of grief and how can we navigate it without like the pain, or be okay with the pain, or actually feel good about grief. And what are some tools and tips and tricks that might help us process and navigate and explore grief in new ways?
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to get to our guest and ask questions, because I think being on the spiritual path, there's a lot of people that are very empathic and take things on and hold on to things. And I'm interested to hear, because I think that I know for myself, I've held on to things for years and years.
Decades.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm just gonna own it. So before we bring our guest on, if you are joining us live, just drop a note in the chat and say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you are catching us on the replay, be sure to say hello as well, and just type in #replay to let us know that you've caught this show. And if you are catching us on Facebook, please be sure to follow our page. It's at facebook.com/girlsbehavingmetaphysically. And if you are on YouTube, just smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the little bell notification. And on both Facebook and YouTube, don't forget to like or love today's video.
It's the world we live. It's the world we live in, right?
I know.
I think it's very spiritual, because we're always pushing buttons.
Look at you.
Ooh, look at me. Look at me go. Okay, well, before I get too carried away with myself, let me introduce our guest. Today's guest is a very special person. Her name is Bonnie Gonzalez, and she is a registered nurse, along with a grief coach and a licensed practitioner and soul collage facilitator. That doesn't even begin to describe who she is, but that's a good start for today. She's been a registered nurse for over 35 years, and she's worked in with palliative care, hospice, intensive care. She's got more credentials than one can have in their wallet, anyway. And And I'm just excited to welcome her. So we'll learn about her as she comes out. And welcome, Bonnie.
Welcome, Bonnie.
Yay. It's so good to be here. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about grief. That's all burners are fully lit and fully charged when that subject comes up for me. And I know that's not the norm. Okay, I know that's not the norm, and I respect that. I just want to make you laugh. I know the title of the show, but for some reason I thought it was girls misbehaving metaphysically. Misbehave.
We don't talk about that out loud, Bonnie.
That's a secret.
That's a little secret.
Kept secret. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing, right? We can't misbehave because
exactly.
it's all spiritual, right?
Yes. It's all divine, right?
It's all divine order.
Coming from that place. So
exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. So
Bonnie, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How did you get into the whole grief thing? Like what drew you to it? And sorry, before you answer, I'd just love to clarify for folks, because normally when we think of grief, it's usually around losing a loved one when they make their transition. And grief is something that permeates pretty much any loss, whether it's a relationship, it could be a job. And so the things that we're going to talk about, I think, right, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to talk about, tips, tricks, tools for navigating all of those kinds of losses that we grieve.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, Samaya. I know that when people hear grief, the first thing they think is death, the big mother loss, which it is the big mother, okay? But the mother has siblings, the mother has little ducklings that come, the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, the loss of health, the loss of the bloom of youth, as I call it. I didn't want to use the other word that starts with an O, but the bloom of youth. Loss shows up in so many ways.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is that it tends to affect us in the same way, mentally, emotionally. It has that effect.
Yeah.
Grief is really the loss of expectations, the loss of the way things were going to proceed. Say that you had that job with the Fortune 500 company and you were going to be the CEO, and suddenly you're in it, you're laid off. It's over. That dream is over. So it's the loss of an expectation. It's the loss.
I love that.
Of dream.
I love that. That's such a great way to encapsulate all of the ways that we grieve, or all of the things that we grieve for.
Exactly.
There was a saying I first encountered probably 25 years ago that goes something like, "We make plans, God laughs."
Oh, that's true. I love to keep God laughing, and I want God in a good mood. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
That sounds good.
Exactly. So Gil says, "Hello, Bonnie."
Oh, hello, Gil. Maybe I'll be there on Sunday. Okay. So you were asking me how I got started on this path. And I didn't start on the path. Grief showed up on the path. It was just there. I read a book when I was in second grade. This is not a joke. I read a book when I was in second grade. And the title of it is that I want to be a nurse. That is all from second grade. That is all I ever aspired to be, was a nurse. Other things came and went, but it always circled back to nursing. That was just who I needed to be. And I feel so fortunate that I found my purpose in life early. I know so many people continue seeking and having a different experience. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But I was just fortunate, and so I finally pursued the path of nursing. And I'll make you laugh. When people take their clothes off, everything goes. All of the trappings, all of the facade
Right.
goes. And I got to sit with people in that state of not having their usual disguises on, not being able to wear those particular masks. And I remember starting to work in intensive care. And that's when I really just met death. That was my beginning with facing with people with the end of life, and supporting and encouraging families through that. And then I had my own experience with losing my father. And this is it always stays with me. I can remember knowing that he was going to die. And for some reason, I needed to tell him that I was going to miss him. I needed to tell him. And I know that probably sounds very, it's like, okay. But coming from a background where you don't talk about death, you don't entertain death, for me to summon the courage to talk to him at his bedside was monumental. The equivalent of climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
But it was the most changing the trajectory of my life, per se, because what he had to say was so profound. He talked about death being very, very much of something not to fear.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he says, Bonnie, I don't want you to take my passing so hard. And this is, he was an older guy, and that's how I don't want you to take this so hard. He said, I've been to the other side. I've seen the other side. And we're going to be together again. So therefore, don't worry.
Wow.
Don't worry. And at that moment, of course, I could barely hear those words.
Yeah.
But it has sustained me. And he transitioned like 35 years ago or so. I feel like he's been dead longer than he was alive. But that message stayed with me. And that is what gave me the courage to continue to talk with my patients, not just around the possibility of death and dying, but the loss of their, limb. I worked in a hospital that was a county hospital. So we had some really, really traumatic incidences that patients had suffered. So just that conversation with him just kind of cracked me open to start talking to other people, to see what they feel, talking with family. Talking with family. I have more to say, but I'll take a breath. I'll take a breath.
Well, I just want to say that's pretty impressive what your dad said, considering you came from a background of not talking about death.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty enlightening. So when you sit with people, I mean, so I'm thinking about there's death and there's all kinds of things like Gil said, loss of the dream.
Yes, that I said the loss of a dream. Yes.
Yeah, and all kinds of losses that we have. And so, is there, I mean, this is obviously a natural part of life to grieve, but how do we? It feels like, sometimes people don't take it to completion, or sometimes is there a way to get through grief and really let go on some level, or is it something that just shapeshifts into something else? Or I don't know.
I hear what you're saying, and here's how I hear that and hold that. What happens with us and with myself as well, we want to quickly move away from feelings of discomfort, quickly wanting to move away. And I know how it feels to sit with grief or loss of ideas. It is finding finding within yourself, what prevents one from wanting to sit with that feeling, to see it through to its fruition, till its end, till it runs its course? What is it that would allow you to sit with that discomfort?
Yeah.
And yeah, did you have?
I was just going to say, I hear you, and I think, well, what is its course? Because I'm thinking, so if I sit with the death of a loved one or the loss of something that, I mean, we're going to get into gray areas, so let's just stick with the death of someone. Like, to see it through, like, does that mean at the end of it, after I'm done crying and kicking and screaming and going through depression or whatever, wherever that takes me, what happens if I can't get past the fact that I'm never going to have this person back in my life? Or is there a way to come to terms with that? And that's the physical death. So my question is really two-part, because like when I think about myself, I can think of relationships that still, if you talk to me about them, friends that have broken up with me, you know,
Oh,
I mean, but you know what I mean? Friends that, whatever, for whatever way we go our separate ways, like friendships that have ended like that, that I still feel, I mean, I still feel the break,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes.
So how do you know, and it's like, it's not that I don't even know that I want the relationship to be the same, but like I miss so-and-so being my best friend, even if she's back in my life and is my friend now. You know what I mean? Like, how do it's not the same, and I still grieve certain things about that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Those were many questions in one.
Oh,
sorry.
And I have many answers in several answers. What I wanted to kind of move away from, because I did talk about the grief of a loss of a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about my own personal experience with grief around my divorce or separation from my first husband. There was that period of, I really wanted to be, quote unquote, the perfect mother, the perfect wife. I mean, gosh, I prided myself on that. I felt like that's what I was here on the planet for. But at some point, I had to come to the realization that this relationship was causing me more pain than anything. The pain was just excruciating. And I finally left, divorced, and with 4 kids, so having to just continue to move forward. I didn't have time to stop and go, oh, woe is me there, woe is me. But I wasn't divorced more than maybe 3 months when it came to me in a dream that this was a true loss. I dreamt that I was driving with my husband and the kids in the car, and suddenly he just slumped over and he wasn't breathing anymore. And in this dream, this is weird, he turned to a sun visor, like the sun visor. And it's like, oh, well, let me just put that sun visor on the side of the road and keep driving. And in the dream, I drove to like a mosque, like a temple. And it felt like it was Middle Eastern, where people really wail, where they really wail. And that's my phone wailing.
Oh, that was a good timing. It went into
I know. It felt divinely inspired.
Yes, and we're at the temple, and I start to wail. I just started to wail. There was, in the stream, I was just wailing and wailing. And what came up was, I never wanted to be a single parent with 4 kids. For me, I knew that at that moment that I had really, Robin, just like you said, kind of stuffed things down. And what I did, I realized at that moment, that I really needed to get some professional help to talk this through. to really see that through and look at all the things that I was not wanting to face, the fear of never getting married again, the fear of being overwhelmed by the responsibility of single motherhood. So I think I hear what you're saying, Robin, when you're asking about how you get through that. And what I want to say is that there is no time limit. There's no time limit on grieving anything. Samaya, I think you said that you've been holding on to some things for years.
Yeah.
And that's true. And I think, and I'll use that I term. I feel when the time comes to move through that, you'll find blocks around different things that maybe you want to succeed. Being able to see that and seeking help in so many ways, so many ways that we could talk about. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to share. TC put a comment in. She said, we don't talk about transitions nearly enough. Also, death used to be much more a huge part of life, younger people dying. So it was much more accepted, but we have little experience with it nowadays.
Mm. Do you think the pandemic is bringing that back to light again, shedding a light on the issue of death? Almost, I feel almost being forced to revisit death, being forced to revisit what we feel death is. I've had quite a few deaths personally and very close in a very short period of time. And it made me think of some things from the past that almost feels like we were more in touch with death in the past. I remember when my grandmother died, there was like a wreath that you would put on your door. There was like a corsage that people would wear to church on Sunday to let everybody know that you were in grief, that you had lost someone. And I think we definitely have moved away from that kind of public acknowledgement that this house has suffered a loss by having that wreath on the door. Yeah. So I feel that the pandemic is it's maybe stirring people a little bit, stirring people around.
Absolutely. Death. And TC says, sure, this is such a great time for this conversation.
Yes. Thanks, TC. Yes.
It's so interesting because I've noticed, and I don't know, Robin or Bonnie, if you guys have, or anybody who's kind of watching us in this moment, that often if we want to grieve in our own way, that folks around us, whether they're friends or family members, are uncomfortable with our grief. And like I've heard, I've not experienced this personally, but I've heard other people tell me that so and so said, I should be over this by now, right? Or it happened so long ago, whether that be weeks, months, years. Why are you still carrying it around? And I just, I'm guessing you might have heard, given the line of work that you do, that you've heard stuff around that. I was wondering if you have any tips.
Yes, those are things we do. If we're going to learn how to support each other through grief, I really feel that there need to be some dialogue around what not to say. There really needs to, because you're smiling, but sometimes people don't know what to say.
Absolutely.
And they want to say something.
I was smiling in recognition.
And it's, I don't want to sound preachy or any of those things. I just want to sound like a gentle aunt that's advising people along the way. It's like taking some responsibility in learning how to be with someone in grief.
Yeah.
Learning how to be. Learning how to just say something like, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. I am just so sorry that you lost that job. I know that meant a lot. How can I help? How can I help? And maybe sometimes it's not even doing anything in particular, but just that person knowing that you are there to listen.
Yeah.
And don't forget the importance. This is Auntie Bonnie again. Don't forget the importance of just listening, the value in listening, the value in listening.
I think that's so important, because I think what you say is key, and what we forget is I'll speak for myself, but I think my human instinct, our human instinct, is to want to fix it. You know, we want to jump in and fix it and make it all better. And just to be able to pause and to really say, I'm so sorry. Acknowledge, it's like acknowledging what's happening, and acknowledge that you don't know what to do. You know, and because we don't, I mean, even if you gave us a list of things to do, we don't know what's going to be right for what person.
Exactly.
In each moment, right? Exactly. What was right for me last week might not be right for me today.
And let me ask you, I'll ask you both this, and you tell me what you feel about this. I think the reason that people say things such as, oh, you should be over this now, haven't you grieved long enough? Because they themselves internally are not comfortable with that dialogue. They're not comfortable with the idea that this particular emotion could last for so long. They're not comfortable. So it's like an inside job, checking in with me. Am I comfortable to be with Mary Sue today? And if I'm not, that's okay. Then don't be with Mary Sue today. I think it's so interesting where we are. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, it's so interesting because I don't think I can imagine saying that.
Saying which part, Robin?
You should be over it by now.
Oh, Robin.
I can't figure out how to get over things that happened to me in elementary school. So I can't, I mean, but seriously, like whatever the moment was, I'm grieving when my art teacher said to me, well, that's not like so-and-so's project. And I was like, fine, then I'm not going to be an artist. And went on my, you know what I mean? I can't, that's been my story, no matter how many morning pages I've written from the artist way, or how many workshops I've taken, and yes, I can say I'm over it. And in theory, I'm over it, but the story's not gone. I think that somewhere in my being, I'm still running the story.
Yes.
So like, I understand with people that, like that may be a loss that somehow is always in your heart and soul and never leaves you. But like with jobs and things like that, we're not really, I mean, are we mourning the job, or are we mourning the thought that that was going to be the job that made us who we want to be, or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's about the dream. It's not, as you say, it's not just the job, but it was hope. It was the hope of what that job would give you internally. Does that make sense? Of what
the identity that the identity that we kind of give ourselves of, if I have this job, that means I'm X, Y, and Z.
Exactly. And now suddenly all the women want to go out with me because I'm working at this place or doing whatever. So yes, Robin, you're so right. It's about what it would have brought, not necessarily the job or
go ahead. I was just going to say, it's the meaning, that whatever meaning we've ascribed to, having that job, having that relationship, having that person in our lives in exactly this way. What does that mean about me and my identity and who I am in the world, and how others see me, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so, I mean, I think along those lines, then, I mean, it'd be fair to say on some level, the whole world may be grieving right now, just the last year that we've gone through. Grieving something. I mean, the loss of something, I don't know.
What I was going to say, to speak to the grief that we're going through from the pandemic, it's what's called a collective grief, collectively.
Right.
All grieving this. And I find that when it's a collective grief, you have more people that you can reach out to talk to about what was your loss. What did you, how did you navigate this part? Oh my gosh, I've been so lonely. How did you navigate loneliness? Versus when you're suffering your own, I'll say isolated loss, it may be harder to reach out.
It's so interesting, Bonnie, because immediately my brain went to, well, different people, everyone's grieving different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thought that I had as you said that was, is it easy to have those conversations? Because, when, just seeing what I read on social media and whatnot, some people are grieving the loss of freedom. Some people are grieving churches being closed. Some people are grieving the censorship and whatnot that we're seeing on social media about various things. And other people are grieving the isolation, the fear of the pandemic and what that brings up. And so I've experienced, conversations with folks who are on one side versus the other, and those conversations do not go well because it's very, everyone's having their own pandemic experience, and so it's interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no, what is that called? Comparative suffering. Like mine is worse than yours. Oh no, I lost this, so this is none of that. Our grief, our loss is personal to us, and it's painful. I don't even care if it's like, well, because of the pandemic, I lost my beautiful leather jacket and I can't find it. And somebody else would say, oh, well, my grandma died. That's even worse. It's like,
yeah, or I lost my business
exactly
because the state's been shut down for a year.
So I think that this is just one big grief school that's going on right now.
Yeah.
One big grief school to give us the opportunity to talk about this, bring it out of the back room, put it on the front burner, and let that take some of that, stigma away from it, some of that dread away from it. That is a common occurrence in our lives, and more so now.
Yeah, and it's so, as I think about it, I know I recognize the things that I'm grieving of the past 12 months, and I don't know if a lot of folks do, right? Or I don't know that they would put the word grief
to it. Yes.
To it, exactly. I think that's what I'm trying to say is they, they might talk about it as anger, or they might talk about it as sadness. They might talk about it as,
missing
a number of other emotions, but I don't know. And I'm just curious. That just popped into my head.
And what popped into my head when you said that is the value of this show. That's our mission here, to bring that out, to say, maybe that's what's going on. You're in grief, when maybe they have not even thought about it.
Yeah, exactly.
This pandemic sucks. I'm angry. I'm depressed. I can't get out of bed. It's like, have you thought about maybe you're in grief?
Yeah.
So that's what we need. We need more shows like this, more opportunities to talk.
Yeah.
More opportunities.
So what? Let's talk about the benefits of grief.
Oh, my sister. My sister's younger, and unfortunately, 3 years ago she lost her husband suddenly. Just outside sunning himself, and that was it. 49 years old, and so I was telling her, I'm putting this together, like all the benefits of grief. I called it, the benefits of grief, and she said, there aren't any benefits. There aren't any. And I said, well, maybe I can rephrase it. So I rephrased it as unexpected positive outcomes of grief. Because
Nice
sometimes,
marketing spin.
yeah, sometimes, you have to say what resonates. And
Right.
so I thought that was less. And just taking her lead on that for her, and her feeling that resilience. If I can live through this, I can live through resilience. The opportunity to go inward, to look inward, to say, what do I really want my life to be like? What do I really want the future? Can I paint a future? That grief sometimes can slow us down to that point, can slow us down. I don't know if I was just trying to think how to phrase this, that using the I'm going to use my I statement. I have been at times not even able to get out of bed because of grief. It's like, can I just put the pillow over my head? Mm-hmm. And I allowed myself to do that, put the pillow over my head and say, okay, what do I want? What do I want? Allowing me to ask me those questions, to say, where do I want to go? How do I want to move forward in the world? What is it that I want to do? What is it that I want from my life?
I love what you just said, Bonnie, about it, grief forcing us to slow down. Mm-hmm. And especially here in the States, it's just that's like not in our nature. That's not in our blood. And we're constantly on the go. And that's, getting back to talking about grief with the pandemic and all of the ways that we're grieving things. One of the gifts of the pandemic is that it's forced us individually and collectively to slow down.
Right. Not as many opportunities to have a diversional activities.
That's distractions. Exactly.
Diversional activities. And so that ability to go inward, the opportunity to reinvent yourself. An opportunity to reinvent yourself. That particular career is over. Maybe there's another career that you've always thought about having. Now is the time. Being allowed to look at new relationships and what do you want that to be?
Yeah. And I know, I don't want to sound woo-woo about it, but it's
like, bring on the woo-woo.
But I mean, in some ways, it's really, not to dismiss it, but it's also a part of reframing it, because there's always a new beginning there. There's always a renewed spirit, or there's always an adjustment that you can choose to look at in a positive light if you choose it to do it.
Well, there's that song lyric that just popped into my head, which is every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
That's Green Day. I had written that down because I love that. I
feel like it's somebody else besides Green Day, but maybe you're right.
I think it's I looked it up. It was Green Day because I had it in my head, and it's like, who wrote that? And I did a Google. Maybe we can Google grief for how long does it last? Because that is the question that I get from from all of the from all of my work with grief. How long will this last? How long will this last?
Semisonic is the band.
Semisonic? Okay.
Closing Time is the song. Maybe there's a Green Day song.
Yeah, there's a Green Day song, Closing Time. Yeah. But we're not there yet. So
exactly. Exactly.
Even
so we got just a couple comments in the chat. Can I just bring them up? So Gil, this is from a while back. Gil said he loves the acknowledgement of the wreath. Mm-hmm. And that's great. And he was talking about what the job, the marriage, etc., symbolizes when we were talking about all of the things that what we're really grieving, like what's underneath the, I guess,
the loss of those things.
Exactly. And Karen says, a person's grieving process is a path only they can take, and each journey is different in every way. Absolutely. Mine for my son has been 9 years, and sometimes daily, and sometimes takes a break. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's such a great point, Karen, because there's no right way to grieve and there's no wrong way to grieve. And I know for me, like with my mom, she transitioned, it'll be 8 years ago in a few months.
Wow.
And every once in a while, like still something will pop up and I'm all teary and weepy, and it lasts for, 30 seconds or a few minutes and then it's gone. It's almost like layers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I was going to say first of all, to Karen, I'm sorry for her loss.
Yeah.
And yes, I attribute grief. It's like being at the beach. Suddenly the sun's out, then a big wave comes out of nowhere and just knocks you over. And
Yeah.
as quickly as it came, it goes again. Suddenly you find yourself just in tears for no particular reason. Maybe they didn't have Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and that's what that's what you needed to get through that moment of thinking about my mom or whatever. It's like waves. It's like riding a wave. And for myself, what I do is I say, I just allow grief to have its way with me when it comes. For me,
Oh, that's so great.
for me to allow it to pass through. It's not that it's less painful, but I give it space to just pass through. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you to Karen for that.
Yes, absolutely. And then TC said, she pulled this from Google. She said, there's no set timetable for grief. You'll probably start to feel better in 6 to 8 weeks. The whole process can last anywhere from 6 months to 4 years. You may start to feel better in small ways.
TC, I listened to, I don't know, her name is Aurora Winters, I believe, and she wrote some books on grief and does grief coach training for grief coaches. And she talked about that. 55 million people a day loses a loved one. 55 million people a day. And they will grieve anywhere from the moment it starts up until 8 years. 8 years.
Wow.
So I just thought it was significant in the moment that I read it. It was really significant. But just that it's so common, I guess that's what I'm saying. And TC was saying about the time period there that it would last. And I would say there's no time period per se. We all have our own clocks and watches, but just that the intensity of it.
Yeah.
The intensity of it lessens. You won't always feel like I just can't put another foot in front of in front of the other today. I just can't. And and I was going to say, and if you find yourself in that situation, reach out for help. That's when you need to reach out. When it's been a month and I just can't get dressed. I haven't had a shower. Then
Right.
that some help. That help is there. That help is there.
So what would you, for somebody who's navigating grief, whether it's the loss of a loved one, the loss of a business, the loss of a job, the loss of a friendship, and, what kind of tools or tips and tricks, so to speak, what kind of tools are available to kind of help people navigate in a healthy way?
I want to start it by saying that, just acknowledging that grief and grieving is exhausting.
Is it what? Sorry, say that again.
Exhausting.
Oh, exhausting. Yes.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
The top number one on that list is rest. Number one is rest. And know that when you're in grief around a loss, regardless of what it is, that it is exhausting. It's emotional. And to take some time to rest. Self-care is just whatever your best method of self-care is to do, take part in that. If it's like going for a massage or pedicure, and if you can't do it, I say get a grief buddy. you get somebody to say, I say, can you be my grief buddy for a minute? I'm going through something really hard. Can I call on you? Can I call on you to, to take me to an appointment or to go with me to a social event if I want to go, but I don't know if I can take questions about what happened to Bill or what's going on. So reach out or ask for a grief buddy is what I call it. And meditation, oh my gosh, meditation, there's even specific meditations on grief, guided meditations on grief.
Yeah.
Or if you have a spiritual practice, now is the time to fall into that.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the grief buddy? Because I love that idea. And before we jump into there, David said ice cream.
Yeah,
I'm with you, David. I'm with you, man, after my own heart.
And that's on aisle 7 at Safeway.
Exactly. So can talk a little bit more. What is a grief buddy? How do you ask somebody to be a grief buddy? When you're asking somebody to sign up to be a grief buddy, what does that entail?
Yes. So what I say, just take stock of friends. Look around. What friends do you have that want to support your moving through? It could be a sister, a cousin, a best friend, but be careful. How do I want to say this? Realize though it's your best friend, they may not have that capacity at this time to be there, and that would be awfully unfair to them.
Yeah.
So you explain what it is that you need. I need a companion. I need somebody like just for a couple months that can be there when I'm feeling like I just can't move forward alone. That I need somebody, as I said, to just drive me for my pedicure, go with me for an appointment that I usually go to on my own. But because of where I am emotionally, I just can't navigate that right now.
Yeah.
Like if you ask them, your grief buddy, oh, I want to go to this party. Can you go with me? But can you drive so that just in case I get there and I'm just so overwhelmed and I need to leave right away, that we can do that. So they are agreeing to whatever it is that you're letting them know that you need.
And Bonnie, I want to say I too love that idea, but I'm also thinking the reverse, that we can show up for somebody and say, let me be your grief buddy, and let them know how we can be there. Because I'm thinking about when my dad passed, I remember I was sitting at home and I called my friend, and my friend was at work, and she's like, okay, I'm coming over. I was like, no, you're at work. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, I'm coming over, and she did. And she's like, okay, we're going for a walk, and we went for a walk. And I was like, oh, and then she's like, okay, we're going to the baseball game tonight. And I was like, what? But I was sitting at the baseball game. And of course, everything feels surreal when something like that happens. And I also knew, I was also still connected.
Yes.
And so I wasn't alone. I wasn't processing in that way that kept me down. And obviously I'm talking about it 30 years later or something. It was just one of those moments that I knew that I was doing the right thing. And I always remember that, because in my mind, when she said, I'm coming over, I was like, no, I'm fine. I've got it. It's fine. I've got to make more calls. I've got to do this. I had my, you're in that mode, like you're going to do things. So it was so great to have somebody else pull me out.
Robin, I love that. Thank you for that reminder. Thank you for that reminder that we can offer ourselves to others that we see that are in grief.
Absolutely.
I had a friend who...
Sorry, just jumping in. Tifa said that she wished she would have had a grief buddy when her husband passed. It was so hard to get back into socializing.
Yes. Thank you, TC.
Thank you, TC.
I was going to say, to Robin's point about being a grief buddy, I had a friend who was in grief because her boyfriend married someone else. Anyway, but she was devastated, and I could just tell from her voice. And I said, do you want me to come over? years later, when we talked about it, she said that was the most kindest thing anybody could have asked. Do you want me to come over and
Yeah.
sit? And just realizing you don't have to say anything. Just as I said back in the beginning, listening or just sitting with someone.
Just being.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would even go further to say that, because what I tend to do is ask somebody, like, what can I do? And of course they go, nothing, it's fine. So it's like being in that place where you really take the lead on it, and don't give them another decision to make or another thought in their head. And I think that's really important.
That's so true, Robin, because so many times we'll say, call me if you need something. Call me if you need something.
Right.
Sometimes people don't even know what they need.
Right.
And for you to call to say, oh, I'm here. Knock, knock, I'm at the door. Us Americans like to have everybody announced. Or most people that I know want to know that you're coming by.
Yeah.
So just announcing that, yes, I'll be popping over at a certain time, and can I pick up something at the store? Do you need something?
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, Bonnie, I didn't say in her introduction that she lives in Ireland now and she's visiting the US, but that's my experience of other countries is that, you don't have to make a date to come over and knock on the door. Like, people drop by, people bring food, people bring soup. I mean, it's a common thing, and that's not something we do here so readily. And it's a good point.
So realizing that.
Yeah.
And so to TC's point about wishing she had that because it was so hard to get back into socializing, what would you say for someone who doesn't have that, or what is the step or what is the movement you make towards staying in that connection or returning to getting socialized?
Oh, you mean getting back into the dating scene? Is that our question, or did I?
I don't even think it was. I didn't understand it as dating. I think she just meant to be with people. Period. Like when you retreat like that from grief, how do we begin again?
How can we re-engage?
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing. There was one piece that I wanted to bring that along with the grief buddy or something to really start to get you to thinking is art therapy. Art is really wonderful. Finding groups, organizations. There's so many organizations that I could refer one to start getting back, just dialogue around that, dialoguing with other people that want to re-engage. Support groups are just wonderful to get you to that place of identifying what it is that you want. It's like, yes, I want to get back to life, but how? Not necessarily dating, but I just want to be able to feel like I can connect with people again, just having a connection. So support groups, support groups and physical exercise groups are really good for that as well. Movement is a good way of getting those emotions moving through our bodies and out.
That's so great, because it's so important. We always forget how we retain things in our body, those emotions. And that's so beautiful that you brought that up, because it's talking, yes, it's re-engaging with a community of some kind, whether it's a support group or a spiritual community. And it gets back into that self-care that you talked about before. And I think one of the most important, and this might be another show that we need to explore, Robin, but just how we, all the ways that we hold on to things in our body and how we can kind of facilitate letting them move through us through movement. Is beautiful.
Yes. There's even yoga poses for grief. There's a whole series of yoga grief.
There's like grief. It's called like grief yoga, right?
Grief yoga. Yes,
Yeah.
the whole movement now around the semantics and how things move, stays in our body, or how our body, how we've forgotten. I think there's that book, The Body Keeps the Score. How important it is to engage the body in therapies. When we talk about talk therapy, engaging the body with movement therapy. So there's yoga. Dance is another great way of moving that energy through.
Yeah.
And I know that some people, hardcore exercise for them does it, but engaging the body is really vital. Just going out for a walk, just to change of scenery, just to look up and see a green tree after looking at my beige wall for, weeks and weeks. So just allowing nature to bring about that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know when Gil has experienced depression or whatever, I'll, if I can pull him out of the bed and make him dance, things get, like, come on, let's dance. Let's dance,
Yes.
Even though I know he wants to take a swing at me, but
swing dancing.
Exactly. That's probably where that came from.
Yes, swing dancing. The other thing I was going to also recommend too are retreats. There is so many retreats around with that theme of grief, of moving through grief. And there's nothing. Well, there have been, I was going to say there's in-person retreats, but during COVID, there's been online retreats that have been pretty effective. I attended a couple myself, so I can speak from that. And don't be shy about reaching out for coaching, psychotherapy. Go for it. If you are really stuck, try something new. Try something different.
I love that, Bonnie. And it's don't be afraid to try something different, right? It's if X doesn't work, try Y, and if Y doesn't work, try Z. Like, because it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, was there's no wrong way to go through our own grieving process,
and no time period. And Robin said something early about morning pages. Yes, writing, journaling. Sometimes, oh my gosh, you just keep writing. It's amazing what comes out, what gets unearthed. Just rest all of your thoughts and ideas on paper. Just rest them there.
Yeah, I think that's great, putting a voice to it in a way. And let's not forget the biggest tip of all, ice cream. Thank you, David.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say soul
ice cream solves so many problems.
Right.
Oh gosh,
it's universal.
Right up
there. The universal drug
therapy. Right, that's right there with
exactly. Ben and Jerry, my two therapists.
Well, Bonnie, it's been so great to have you. I mean, we didn't even touch on soul collage. That's going to have to be a whole nother show.
That's another show. Oh, you mean I'm invited to stage left? Is that what it's called? I'm being invited to move along.
Well,
wonderful. You both are just great with what you're doing, and wow, the gifts that you're bringing. The gifts that you're bringing are so tremendously needed at this time. So.
Thank you. This has been so great having you, Bonnie, on
nice.
this, especially having you on this side of the pond.
Yes,
you're usually up late with us on Ireland, and so. But this topic has been wonderful. Thank you for joining us and giving us the opportunity to explore all the ways we grieve and how we can navigate it successfully. I guess, can you navigate?
Let's just say navigating grief.
Navigating it in new ways.
Yes.
In new ways. So, and I just want to thank David and Karen for joining us. I was so happy to see Karen out there, and and
Gil and
TC and Gil. Yes.
absolutely.
and all that we can't see. We're
Yes,
glad
all
to
those we
have
haven't
all
seen.
of you whenever you watch us.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be here next week, and we'll see you then.
See you then. Take care. Have a great weekend, everyone. Lots of love.